a lot of people use YouTube to watch videos, to subscribe to hilarious channels, to prove a point about how funny that cat-chasing laser is, and yes, even to upload videos themselves for the joy of others. And while it may seem that anyone can upload any type of video onto YouTube, there are actually certain laws and guidelines that protect video content creators from the repercussions of copyright and fair use, or, if you live in Australia, fair dealing. According to the Australian Copyright Council, dealing means copyrighted material can be used as long as it is done in ways that are reserved to the copyright owner. However, this doesn't mean that you can just go upload copious amounts of copyrighted material. You have to ensure that you use it fairly. The federal court once stated that to determine whether material has been used fairly can only be judged by the criterion of a fair-minded and honest person. So, courts, in that case, will make a judgment based on whether this fair-minded and honest person considers the user of the material genuinely abiding by one of the 5 purposes in the Fair Dealing Act, and also whether their use of it is fair in that context. To determine its fairness, factors like whether the material is being used for commercial purposes and whether the copyright owner has lost money from its use, for example, songs, are taken into consideration. Some of you may be wondering how I'm avoiding copyright claims myself for the use of my background music. But this song, Life of Riley by Kevin MacLeod, is one of thousands of royalty-free songs floating around on the internet. The site I use, called Incompetech, which I'll link in the box below, has thousands of royalty-free songs for use. As long as I properly credit them and the owner, and as this is an educational video, I can use them freely. But back to the main point of my video. You can only rely on the defense fair dealing provides you if you, or an organisation, is using copyrighted material. You would not be safe if you were to upload a video, picture, or song and ask others to critique it. Rather, it would only be considered fair dealing if you yourself are the one critiquing the material. All this information is completely irrelevant if you don't know when you can use it. Generally, you need permission from the owner to upload copyrighted material, but there are a few exceptions to this rule. 1. If copyright has expired. 2. You are using less than a substantial part of the material, such as quotes or excerpts. According to the Australian Copyright Council, 10% of the number of pages of a single chapter is considered reasonable and fair dealing. If neither of these apply to you, then you'll need to ensure that your use of the copyrighted material falls under one of the 5 specific purposes for fair dealing exceptions. 1. Research or study. 2. Criticism or review. 3. Parody or satire. 4. Reporting news. Or 5. Professional advice by a lawyer, patent or trademark attorney. And remember, there is no open-ended exception law in Australia. Use of copyright material is subject only to specific exception for specific purposes, like the ones I just mentioned. Now all that is good and fair, but what does it matter if you're uploading to a commercially used website like YouTube? Do these rules go out the window, or does YouTube have its own laws and guidelines to follow? Well, the simple answer is no. YouTube calls them guidelines and opens up a document stating different countries have different rules about when it's okay to use material without the copyright owner's permission. For example, in the United States, works of commentary, criticism, research, teaching, or news reporting might be considered fair use. Some other countries have a similar idea called fair dealing that may work differently. Following that, YouTube details 4 of these guidelines very briefly, but reiterates that uploading copyrighted material to their site must follow these guidelines and abide by the laws set by each individual country. In short, each of those guidelines reflects those 5 purposes I talked about before. And while YouTube doesn't explicitly have its own set of fair dealing laws, it does talk about its stance on fair use protection. YouTube gets hundreds of requests every day to take down videos that copyright owners argue are infringing. And while some are being used unfairly, a lot are well within the bounds of the fair use guidelines detailed by YouTube. In order to stop many of these unfair takedown requests, YouTube got video creators to partner with them in an effort to protect some videos from copyright hazards. Not only does this protect the video creators who have fairly used content, but it also means that the costs associated with takedown notices and lawsuits, sometimes up to $1 million in legal costs, become void. But don't go asking YouTube to protect just any video. Only a small number of content creators get their work protected by YouTube every year, and only if, as YouTube puts it, they are the most illustrative of fair use. Venus Angelic is a YouTuber living in Japan with over 1 million subscribers and 200 videos. Ever since 2010, Venus began uploading videos about how to become a living doll, which reflects the kawaii or cute aesthetic of the Japanese fashion culture. Her mother was her biggest supporter and manager, with access to all her accounts, both financial and social. And when they had a falling out earlier in the year, well, got dirty. When her mother attempted to monetize Venus Angelic's videos, they were actually claimed for copyright infringement instead. YouTube has specific rules about copyright. Every time a copyright claim is brought against you, you'll get a strike or a penalty on your channel. And once you get 3, your account can be terminated. In Venus's case, YouTube closed the pages immediately and launched a 2-month investigation behind the claims, while Venus disputed them with counter notifications. But in the course of the investigation, she was able to prove that the ideas had been her own and she had worked on them by herself from beginning to end. Venus stated in one of her many videos following the problem that after talking with YouTube, should any false copyright claims be brought against her again, YouTube would not be touching her channel at all. Now this is just one case in thousands of others, and for Venus Angelic, the results were positive, but not everyone will have the same luck. So when you're uploading videos anywhere that deal with copyright content, always remember to check whether the content used falls under one of the 5 dealing purposes of copyright if you're living in Australia.